Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Rest is Lean. And as always, I'm joined by my colleagues Alan Lothian and Russell Watkins.
Hello.
And we're here to talk, ramble, discuss, and debate all things lean, continuous improvement, and business improvement for our fun as much as for yours. And thanks for joining us. If you want to leave a comment in the description below, crack on and do that. If you're listening on a podcast platform, then maybe do an email to us instead. And that would be Al on what email address?
The rest is lean at gmail.com.
Have you
Sticky
changed it then, Al?
fingers.
Yeah, it's not the rest is lean anymore, unlike the last episode. But yeah, it's just the rest is lean.
In our last episode, Russell alluded to the fact that he'd been to an event in London and was listening to some important people, and there was some info he could share back with us and see what we think. So, Russ, tell us a little bit about where did you go, why were you there, and what did you learn?
So, happens every year. It's the Make UK annual conference, and it's a gathering of people who work in industry, engineering, manufacturing in London. It's one day. I go every year, and I go primarily because doing what we do, I tend to find you work in the business and not on the business, and it's an excuse to sit back and think and understand what's going on a macro level, to hear what our customers are worried about, and also to meet up with my mate Brian, who's an MD of a business down in Cinderford, who I have a couple of pints with after every year. But 2 years ago I went, and Rachel Reeves, who was then Shadow Chancellor, she gave a keynote in opposition, and I always listen to the keynote and I jot it down because I'm interested what the thinking is. This time, she turned up as a surprise and gave the keynote again, but as the actual chancellor. And I
Yeah.
think there's some interest in the 10 questions were asked from Stephen Phipson, who is the CEO of Make UK, and also from members of the audience. I think six of them are interesting.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I'll quickly tell you what the question was, and I'll summarize the answer from her, and then maybe you can weigh in if you've got a comment.
Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
Firstly, I did a little tally chart of what she mentioned because I think a tally of words that somebody mentions is really
Bigger
useful.
words.
Mm.
Um, because it gives you a feel for the overall direction of what they're saying. So she mentioned Ukraine twice, which is no surprise because Trump was just getting involved then. Innovation three times, AI once, mentioned defense 17 times.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which gave me an early clue that this government is very much interested in pouring money into defense and rearmament and getting GDP on defense up, and therefore trying to reignite all of manufacturing just through defense, which actually is useful for defense and for
Mm.
the supporting industries. Um,
Mhm.
so, question one, what do you see as the challenges for the economy and especially for manufacturing? She said, well, we have to go from 2 to 5% GDP on defense for obvious reasons. We're going to use that to stimulate the economy and revive it, especially because defense jobs are often in deprived areas. It's useful, as was her view. She wants SMEs involved. AI and tech is really good. There's lots of potential to exploit it and get growth throughout the economy.
Mm.
Her answer to that. What do you reckon?
I think it's really not too bad an idea if you do want to stimulate UK manufacturing and probably the wider economy to use the military as a way forward. Take the morals out of it, take the politics out of it. If you were going to tickle just one sector, it's not a bad one to go for because there's an awful lot of heavy industry connected with military. And heavy industry probably has been floundering somewhat. So your steel industries, your forges and foundries, have got to make the big heavy parts that go into military vehicles, artillery pieces, that sort of thing. Um, and then on the opposite end of the scale, at the lightest end of the scale, is electronics and cleverness. Um, Technology is associated with military kit, equipment, deployments. But again, in the UK, we've got a lot of really good companies, very niche, very leading edge on that. But they've not necessarily been doing terribly well just because we don't fund that sort of thing. So I think there's an awful lot of sectors that would benefit from tickling just that one thing. If you did the same with pure automotive, for instance, as would be our background, you would help the same olds. And a lot of the supply chain for that is probably outside the UK, even though we've still got a fair amount of activity in automotive in the UK. You could tickle the gaming industry heavy. We're very good at that, but it doesn't wander too far from programming, electronics, chips, research. It doesn't go into the more mainstream of painting things, moving things, heavy things. So yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, that would be my thoughts.
Yeah. So in terms of the first comment about general challenges, I think there's two key areas. One is which is always the same, ongoing skills and people development, because things are always changing. Case in point, AI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and how that's going to impact on all sectors, let alone manufacturing. But then jumping on your tally chart, Russell, with regards to the defence word said, you guys know I've done quite a bit of work within the defence sector in recent years, and usually that money goes to a select few within the defence sector, and I'm not going to mention some of the
Yeah.
companies.
Al, I'm pleased,
I
carry on, but I'm pleased you mentioned
yeah,
those two things because there are subsequent questions about skills and about being fair on procurement for SMEs. So we'll come
brilliant.
to
Well, okay. So the thing specifically I was going to mention was around about the procurement side. So I'll come back to that later. Okay. So yeah, the two things for me were skills and development because things are always changing. The second thing is on John's point, there's a huge supply chain that we have. We've got some incredibly innovative companies within the UK, all right, and some great SMEs who are, in my opinion, severely undervalued in the
Mm-hmm.
UK. And so much more should be done to support these SMEs because a lot of the people who are working for them, that's where the true innovation comes,
Yeah.
not necessarily the larger corporations. Um, so I would say on the skills aspect, yes, the individual, but also from an SME perspective, the challenge for them is being able to is to be able to diversify into the defence sector. But then that will probably come up in one of the other questions that were mentioned at the conference as well around procurement.
okay, which is question two. Again, Stephen Phipson,
Mhm.
procurement reform. We've heard it all before, and it always ends up with large companies um, hoovering up the money, as you've mentioned, Al.
Mhm.
Will
Mhm.
it figure highly? And she said, yes, we'll have an increased defence budget. It'll stimulate innovation. We want innovation from SMEs. I mean, these are just words at the moment.
Yeah.
We
Mhm.
have the Defence Innovation Fund and a National Wealth Fund. And that was
Yeah.
her answer.
Um, and she may well be right. I can't particularly answer on her behalf. What I can give you is a viewpoint from an SME's perspective, particularly organizations that are trying to get into the sector for the first time. Okay. So there are a number of government portals. They'll say there's one, there isn't. There's actually over 1,900 different portals in the UK
Mm-hmm.
to access not just to access public funds.
Yeah.
That sounds like a
Okay.
cottage industry to me.
I know. Okay. So that sounds a lot broad. That isn't defense specific, but
No.
as you can imagine, a lot of it will be in these 1,900 portals.
Yeah.
They are, in my humble opinion, and I'd welcome other people's thoughts on these who have had the experience, shall we say, of one or a few of these 1,900. Incredibly difficult to find relevant projects to actually apply for.
Yeah.
And then the number of hoops that you have to step through in order to find the right person. And, you know, it'd be a great activity for the three of us is actually how you streamline that those procurement
Mm,
portals.
mm,
Just have one main portal, okay, and have a level of simplified categories that each project falls into, and then a select number of titles or descriptions that could be given. All right. It's a bit like choosing your car for the first time. You've got basic categories, okay, which then converts it into a family, into a value stream, which then allows it to be made.
yeah.
Right. And that does not exist. What you've actually got is every single procurement individual will put their own wordage, their own explanation on what it is they're looking for. And the words they may use may be completely different to what other organizations, particularly SMEs, may be used to using.
Yeah.
So if you've got new SMEs rather, trying to move into the sector, trying to separate and go through the wheat and the chaff to try and find, oh, that project really suits what I do. I'd like to apply. People just give up. I have spent hours with 3Able searching, and I've probably gone through about 20 to 30. And you'll get some organizations that will say, well, actually, ours is the best because what we do is we actually simplify that for you by accessing the different multiple portals
The
at the
go
same time.
compare of the military procurement.
Exactly. But they're using
Adam
their
was
own
thinking.
determinants. Absolutely.
That sucks money out of the coalface
Yeah.
to add another step in another country.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. So it's incredibly difficult for new business. And the thing is that this is the bit that I find amazing as well, because I literally sat in on a government webinar in towards the end of January. And I think memory serves me correct, the 24th of February of this year, they had invested a sum of money, I don't know how much, into streamlining and improving that system.
Yeah.
And I went on it not 2 weeks ago. And I'll be brutally honest, I don't see any difference.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
I get they want to streamline. I get it. We've got some like I said before, we've got some incredibly innovative companies out there, and I do so hope that somebody listens to this and does take a closer look at it because they're missing out on some great companies out there that can make a significant difference.
Yeah,
it's just too difficult. It's too complex.
well,
I'll tell you what I'll do, guys. I'll send you a couple of links over, and when you've got a bit of spare time, I
no,
know you're busy,
Christ, I
guys.
don't. I'm not interested. Life's tedious enough. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. It is crazy, man.
It's
Absolutely crazy.
These procurement
Last-
portals are going to be like the Candy Crush of the military world.
Yeah. Exactly right.
John,
Drives you balmy.
John, I'll throw it across to you in a
Yeah.
sec. But that reminds me that last year, for the first time ever, I was invited to tender for some TFL work. I don't normally tender for government work because I prefer to find private work because I could stay sane that way. Anyway, I had a go at the portal, and it was like a Kafka novel. I couldn't. I consider myself a fairly bright person, but I
Ain't
lost
nothing else, it's a
interest.
trap.
I lost the will to live about
Yeah,
15.
he's brainier than me. He's brainier than me. He is. Yeah.
Couldn't do it. Now, John, what's your view on this?
I think you said it. It's just words at this stage. I think throwing in the word SME is just so that we get past that question of surely there's two or three large two-letter and three-letter acronym companies that are going to hoover up all this money, and we could all guess what they are. And I think that's 90% true. I think the barrier to entry for SMEs, and I'm doing it now, small and medium enterprises, is huge because those that do have the savvy to go look on these portals are going to get lost like we do. They might come across a requirement that is for what they do and not even recognize it because of the language that is used. Um, you've got to get close to getting a contract with military stuff before you actually get to see the spec of the thing that you're going to make or produce or the service you're going to provide. So if you don't already live in that world, it's really difficult to know, will I be able to cope? Should I dip my toe in that water? Simple things, again, acronyms, ITAR, I couldn't even tell you what it stands for, but
Mhm.
not being able to share information about what it is you're making might put people off.
Yeah.
Payment
And
terms is another good one for
payment
SMEs
terms,
as
yeah,
well.
Oh, well, don't get
huge loops.
Mhm. Mhm.
So unless something is very, very directly focused at engaging and bringing on board SMEs,
yeah.
I don't think it'll really happen beyond a few outliers. I mean, what happens with MREs, military ration packs? Trying to lose the acronyms. Does Findus apply to do them? Is there a small company that is doing freeze-dried meals for old folks that is
Mhm.
thinking, well, we can do MREs? How would they even know to go look? It needs government and it needs the military to approach the wider group of manufacturers and providers and say, we have a requirement for military ration packs. We're not going to
Mhm.
say what we need because you lot might have better ideas, but approach us. There needs to be something. I don't know. I don't want to say it's a trade fair,
Mhm.
but there needs to be something that allows folks to see here are all the things that the military needs.
Yeah.
Would you like to get involved? And somebody to hold their hand
Mhm.
and pull them through and maybe use that money to have
Mhm.
somebody champion them. But
Yeah.
let's
Mhm.
not turn it into another cottage industry and develop Go Compare for military procurement because that'll just suck all the money out of it again.
Well,
Can
it's
I
really
just
interesting though because so I have no affiliation with Make UK. I don't work for them. I'm not I just but I suspect their view, and I've heard that their view is that, they got Rachel Reeves there for a start,
Mhm.
and they have a seat at the table in the era of government. So that's a useful thing.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you've got to get in the room, then you've got to be effective in the room. But to be
Mhm.
effective in the room, you've got to be in the room. So fair play. And we'd rather be in the tent. However, some of these questions she just plain dodged. And I tell you who did a really good job of holding her to account, and that's Steph McGovern. Now,
Oh,
Steph
yeah, yeah.
McGovern,
Okay. Mhm.
she always compares it. She's really passionate about manufacturing from the Northeast, from a working class background, and she will phrase the question in a really strong way. So I'm going to pick up on your SME thing. I'm going to skip a couple of questions and move to SMEs. Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
So there's a question from Andrea Wilson in the audience. If you don't know Andrea Wilson, she's on LinkedIn. She works for Honall, I think. She has been championing a minister for manufacturing for a couple of years now. She really drives hard in her own time to try to get manufacturing on the agenda at government,
Mhm.
particularly SMEs. Her question was 90% of the manufacturing companies plus are SMEs.
Mhm.
The first draft of the new industrial strategy, that's number 16 in 16 years, has been done. SMEs only got mentioned half a dozen times. How are you going to include SMEs? Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I'm going to this is where Steph McGovern made a really good point, but I'll come to that. The first thing I've written down here is Rachel Reeves dodged a question on this one, the only one she really dodged. But she said, we're going to make system reforms. We're going to cluster tech and life sciences in the south. And I didn't write anything else down because she swerved the question completely.
Nothing she
Now,
said was worth
Steph
writing
then,
down after that. Yeah.
well, not in my judgment. So
No.
many of the other answers, yes. Steph then waded in and she said, she called back to something that she'd been just that her and Robert Peston on stage have been talking about. She said, is there enough expertise in manufacturing engineering within government
Yeah.
to be able
Ah, within government.
That's good.
to help us out?
Mhm. Mhm.
And the Chancellor said we need she said Well, more secondments between private sector and civil service would be a useful thing. So she swerved that question, but I tell you, I'm going to throw across to you now what you think of the SME answer. But I'm going to preface it with one thing. The Industrial Council Board, I'm not sure that's the right name. It is led and chaired by a very capable person, but that person is from Microsoft.
Mm.
A lot of these things are sponsored by Amazon Web Services. I get it. I get it. These things make the world run, but you'd hope that the steering committee of the Industrial Council of the UK would be manufacturers of different sizes.
Yes.
Mm.
Now, I don't want this to degenerate into a moaning session. So what do you think about the SME thing and industrial strategy?
Really don't
You
think
go
there
first,
is
John, or do you want
one.
me to?
I'll go, yeah. I don't think
Mm.
there is a
Yeah.
strategy to assist SMEs. And I think this isn't political at all. I don't think it would have mattered what colour was there at the moment. Particularly if we're talking about military money and military procurement, those people are trained and for some good reason to look for providers who are large, who are robust, who've got track records, who can suffer their vagaries of saying, "Oh, I'd like 1,000 of those, please." And then they ring up and go, "Oh, no, no, we've changed your mind. We're not doing that anymore. Can I defer it? Or I need exactly the opposite of what I asked you for." So they're pre-wired to look towards the big giants. Again, all the three-letter acronym outfits that we can all imagine to be their main providers. They're not looking for the most innovative. They're not looking for the best value for money. They are looking for safe bets. And that doesn't help the SMEs get a fair go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there,
So
John.
I'm
I
worried.
tell what I can say. What I can say is, if you go to the likes of Barrow, um, certain parts of Bristol, parts of Yorkshire, so where there's key
Sheffield.
defence sites, yeah, okay. The SMEs, I would suggest, or I would say rather, that are within, I don't know, 2 to 5 miles of those sites actually do pretty well.
Mm.
I would say, in my humble opinion, because they've got the accessibility to those sites to do quick turnarounds. For the things that they have procured, these are the larger organizations that you speak of, John, who basically are in the deep doodah and need things rectifying. And I've seen that firsthand on a number of occasions over the past few years. The broader picture is, how do you include all SMEs, as opposed to the ones who are geographically advantaged because they're on the doorstep?
Yeah.
Okay. And going back to my earlier point, there is a complete barrier to entry because, like I said before, trying to go on those portals to access the relevant projects, resource requirements that they need, it's just a mire. There is absolutely no way. They would just give up. And they could be that one SME that drives that just ignites that spark,
Yeah.
of ingenuity within those larger businesses. And I have to say, I don't want people to think that I'm a bit of a hypocrite, because they have paid, those large organizations that we spoke of have paid our bills.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I do see a lot of very, very good people. I do see a lot of money being spent on apprenticeships.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there are some very, very clever, hardworking people in those large organizations. My take on it is that it's the process that's broken, not necessarily the people who are working in those working in those larger organizations. And I have to say, the people who I've worked with, they don't perceive themselves as being, a higher level to everybody else. Because if that was the case, they wouldn't have people like myself and my organization in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
because they recognize that they do want to improve and they do want to make things better.
Mm.
And it does open your eyes to the
Mm.
opportunity that's in there. But fundamentally, if you're going to include new entrants into the market, you've got to give them a level of ease to be able to do so and not make it a hurdle.
Yeah, frictionless.
It
Yeah,
is. It
yeah.
just breaks people down.
Yeah.
Okay.
The analogy I was thinking of before, Ross, when you were mentioning yours was, um, uh, I'm a big football fanatic, and I think like it's where you were saying it was advertised by the head was Microsoft and AWS are sponsoring it. It's a bit like FIFA. FIFA's in this or UEFA's in this, and you only hear those names
Mm.
or Premier League sides. You
Mm.
don't hear the grassroots football. If you think about football, they talk about that. What are they doing to invest in grassroots football
Yeah.
to improve the sport overall? This is a very similar analogy. You've got to make the barriers to entry less of a problem.
Mm.
Especially since mid to high 90% of people who work in manufacturing work in SMEs with 10 people or less.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you look at, do you know, I didn't know this fact, but I found this out on the same day. I'd always intuitively believed this. I've been vaguely concerned for a while about, every industrial revolution, and we're up to four now, every industrial revolution, we worry about euphemistically displacement of people, i.e., people losing their jobs, and
Yeah.
therefore mass social unrest. And the nightmare scenario is we end up eating dogs and burning furniture to
Mm.
survive. And how do you avoid that? Now, I heard this on a different podcast the other week, and it was talking about economic rent, which is an economic concept where when it's about 50-50 balance between capital and money going to labor, it generally things are okay socially. But when more of the money in the economy gets returned to capital, wealthy people who can invest, and less money goes to people who earning wages to make stuff, you start to have a problem. Um, and it strikes me that if you've got 92, 93, 94% of your people working in tiny businesses, you got to look after them. I got
Mm,
I got
mm,
two more questions, gents. Do
good.
you, do you
Yeah,
want
go
them
for
both?
it.
I'll preface first by saying, in between time, as well as filling myself up with coffee and chirping to people, I went to see the Make UK Apprentices, who are a great bunch in Birmingham. They got a lovely facility in Aston where they are really
Mhm,
are. Via a man called Mike Dimmack, shout out to Mike. He
mhm.
is developing next generation of apprentices, and he is actively teaching them lean principles when they are
Lovely.
17, 18 years old.
Good.
That's
Good
a
on him.
time. But okay, I'll start with skills. Rowan Crozier said he asked a question. Chancellor, there's a major skills shortage, 60,000 live vacancies, the apprenticeship levy. What's the government going to do to support SMEs and fix the apprenticeship system? The Chancellor said, we're going to turn it into a growth and skills levy. Um, we're going to change the requirements. We're going to take a good look at maths and English as a requirement. There's going to be an extra 10,000 apprenticeships. Um, and Steph McGovern chirped up and said, "Look, we need to work on the parity of apprenticeships, and it shouldn't be considered to be the lesser thing to go into
Yeah.
university." What are you going to do about educational reform, especially given that we've got 1 million NEETs at the moment, not in education, some
Mhm.
Mm.
training. Um, so uh, the skills shortage and the apprenticeship levy. Interestingly, I know a fellow called Will Bridgman down in Thetford, where they have a apprenticeship levy exchange where they've worked out how to use a current system. They're an SME, and they only pay a fraction towards their apprentices because Aviva, who are headquartered in Norwich, cannot spend all of their apprenticeship levy. So
Right.
they exchange it and they pass it on to SMEs who can use it.
Mhm.
So these mechanisms have built up to get around the current flaw in the system.
I
Gents,
like
what are your
that.
thoughts on
Well, I'm a person that went for the apprenticeship route. I I wasn't dumb at school, but I certainly wasn't academic. I weren't going, oh, goody maths. Um, I was reasonably bright, but when it came to the end of my school time, my teachers were encouraging me to go off to do things at university. and get a degree. And I was lost with the whole concept. It was like, no, I'm done now. I'm finished. I could go out and go and play in a garage or in film and media or to go to some sort of factory. Or where do you go, sir, if you want to be a mad inventor? I literally remember wanting to be an inventor. I, there isn't a place where you go to be an inventor, I don't think, but that's what I wanted. And the idea of, oh no, no, I'll go and read some more books for a bit, for a few more years. Literally, I didn't get why everybody wanted to do it, bar parties. Um, so as soon as I'd done, I was applying for apprenticeships because I thought that was the easy way to get into a business because I don't know how to make a gear. I don't know how to make a movie. Or I'll get an apprenticeship. It'd be brilliant because that way I'll get in and nobody's going to say you can't come to play because you don't know. So I loved the concept, but I didn't get the apprenticeships where I applied for. And
Ah,
so I reluctantly, rather than go on the dole, as I would have called it, said to my teachers, oh, go on and I'll do this A levels thing before you go on to university. And I started it and I did 6 months. And then one of the apprenticeships came back to me and said, we've got a space. And I went, sir, I quit. I'm off. And the school went mad.
and
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 I
and,
again didn't
and throw your books in the air.
understand why aren't they going, yes, we've
mm,
got somebody out there working, doing a job. And it was like, oh no, he's thrown his life away.
mm,
Now, luckily, I'm bullish enough to have gone, well, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
mm,
But I could easily have been brought back. Now, I'm not disrespecting people who went on to university.
mm,
Indeed, I joined GKN, who made me go to university. And I am
mm,
grateful because they got me my qualifications, and here I am.
mm,
But there is this underlying thing that apprenticeships are for people who can't or don't want to do this preferred thing. And that's my biases, but it's stuck with me. And I don't think it's too
No,
far
mhm,
away
it's not
from
so well.
the
mm,
national
mm.
theme.
Shouldn't be that way.
No,
Yeah, it
surely the
shouldn't be
end
that way.
game is
There's
productive
nothing wrong
people
with
doing interesting things, earning money, and in exciting manufacturing
Yeah.
services, etc. Surely that's why you go to university to do that as well. But yeah, so I think the
I
whole thing needs a reboot, and how we do it is a big challenge. And I don't have the answer, but I do
mm,
know it's going to start with the attitude that schools have towards what is the right thing to do when you come to the end of school. It's not
mm,
we're trying to get as many to university as
mm,
possible. I think there's probably a KPI.
yeah, maybe, which takes me, John, to a plug for National Manufacturing Day. I think it's in September, where schools can go around their local manufacturing
mm.
businesses and try and
Mm.
ignite joy in tiny children to say, "Hey, I like the smell of this."
Yeah,
Exactly. Bring the excitement back.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think because
Yeah, absolutely.
while I was at school, I should have visited a lot of businesses to literally have gone, ooh, I like the look of that, or hate that, so that
Well,
you start to learn what it is you like and want.
well,
Mm,
National Manufacturing Day is precisely that. But I had to laugh last year. So this client of ours down in Thetford, Warren Services, they make bespoke engineering stuff for things from Take That concerts to stuff for Ocado.
Mm.
Anyway, so they brought kids around and they work really hard with lots of energy to get kids interested. And then I knew of another company who bought loads of preschoolers, not preschoolers, like 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds around. And this manufacturing company happened to make trampolines. Now, it's an easy sell to
Yeah.
get kids to go around a trampoline factory.
It's
It's
literally
not
the
an
fun
easy sell,
fact.
not an easy sell to get 40 kids engaged in, right, tell me more about plasma profiling.
Yeah.
Oh, I tell you what, though, you can make that look like a ray gun or something like
Or like we used to make in metalwork and really wonky ninja throwing stars when I was at school.
that. Or a crap ashtray.
I've made a lot of uh flight compromised shuriken for throwing stars.
Coffee caddy spoons. I haven't got a coffee caddy, or I got a lot of coffee caddy
Yeah.
spoons.
Anyway, so yeah, so
I've got
go on now.
I was going to say, just going back to John's point, I think there is still, even today, I mean, it's 30, well, I was just thinking now, it's 30 years since I was
Mm.
at, yeah, 30 years since I graduated. Okay. And I enjoyed my time at university, but I still today think there's such a huge disparity between an apprenticeship route
Mm.
and a university route. The only difference is it's far more expensive to go to university now than it was before.
Yeah.
Okay. You come in with, tens of thousands of debt. Okay. And but I still don't see enough on the apprenticeship side to see that as a workable option.
Mm.
I mean, case in point, just distracting slightly. If you want a plumber or any trades person, is it easy or difficult to find a good one? I would say it's still very difficult
Yeah.
to find a really top-notch trade. Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because there isn't the attention, there isn't the attraction to it. Okay. I actually now say if that is starting to turn a corner because, because some people then realize that actually some tradesmen in the right areas of the country are making an absolute,
Yeah.
killing
Yeah.
because they've got a tight catchment.
Yes.
There's no competition or generally no competition, and they do a great job.
Yeah.
All right. And I find a good tradesman is difficult. The point you mentioned before about skills overall. So I look at it as supply and demand. When you are investing in apprenticeships and when you are or young people go into university, all right, that's an investment for the future. That's for skills in the future.
Mm.
That's not necessarily skills that you need right now.
Mm.
And I think the pace of change, in my humble opinion, has increased markedly in the past, say, 10, 15 years. So almost the pace of what AI is a case in point is in terms of the speed at which things are developing because of AI is quicker than people can learn it.
Yeah.
So you're always going to have pockets, okay, of people who are ahead of the curve who can then make money out of it. It's a bit like when we had the internet boom. Yeah. Those people that made an absolute fortune in the early days, and then it peaked and slumped.
Mm.
And then it's found its even keel in recent decades. All right. So that's investment for the future. But what do you do now? All right. And I was thinking long and hard while you guys were talking. And I think as a nation, since we've had Brexit, since we've had rules on immigration, I honestly believe that that's actually hurt us for skills in here and now. There's some incredibly intelligent people, some very, very innovative people who unfortunately had to leave this country because of the change of the rules, and we've lost that skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I get where we've got to invest in the youngsters. I do get that. But there are times where you've got there's a demand for certain skills is now.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can't afford to wait the 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it takes, for these these clever youngsters to be able to, to move forward. We just haven't got the time in some respects. So I do, and I put the defense sector in that. It's quite a volatile period of our lives that we're in geopolitically.
Yeah.
And I sort of get why our current government is saying what they're getting. And I'm not really a political person at all. All right. I just try and hopefully it's a little bit of common sense. Is I sense that there are frictions more than normal, which are going to affect us as a nation. Okay. And some of the skills that we had, dare I say, 5, 7, 10 years ago, unfortunately, I don't think we have those skills. And we've actually had to, and those skills have left us.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say necessarily a bit of a brain drain. Remember the term the brain drain for us
yeah.
about the 80s and 90s? Yeah.
So anyway, that was
Mhm.
that was midday in London. I go every year, and it's always enlightening. And I
How was
enjoyed
the pint afterwards, Russ?
it. Was great. Oh, it's fantastic.
London
Listen,
Pride? Are we going London
I was going to say
Pride?
London Pride. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yep. Anywhere I go, I seek out the craft beer providers. So on application, I have a list of craft beer providers in any UK city.
So it's that time again. Time for our Japanese word of the week. So, Russell, over to you. What have you got for us this time?
Right, I'm glad you asked me, Al. Even though I am not a native Japanese speaker, and I will be crucifying a number of these words and the explanations thereof, I'll give it a good go because I've mingled with a lot of Japanese people. Today's word is kansha or kanzia. Now, translates as deep gratitude. Funnily enough, last weekend was one of my favorite, two of my favorite sports events. There was the Six Nations Rugby Union, which I love, and there was also the All England Badminton Championships in Birmingham, Yonex Badminton Championships. If you watch any Japanese badminton player, when they walk off the court at the end, they will bow deeply to the court. They're expressing kanzia, deep gratitude, and that means they are saying thank you to the people who put the net up, thank you to the umpire, thank you to the people who made the shuttlecock, thank you to the goose whose left wing the shuttlecock came from, thank you to the people who laid the court, thank you to the people who made the chemicals and materials that laid the court, in a supply chain gratitude that goes all the way back. Now, that sounds light. It's the same reason why there is a word that Japanese families say at tea time, just before they eat. I'm going to crucify this one, it's something like itidakamas or something like that. And you are saying, thank you for cooking the rice. Thank you for buying the rice. Thank you to the store for stocking it. Thank you to the lorry for taking it. I think it's really important that we remember that there's a supply chain and effort to everything,
Mhm.
because I think that makes us grateful and therefore we will waste less of it.
Yeah,
Nice
Kanji.
one. Nice word.
wonderful.
Thank you, Russ.
And I can remember my Japanese translator regularly saying "itadakimasu."
Oh, really? Great.
Absolutely. Yeah, if anybody wants to put their comments in the description below the YouTube version of our podcast, that'd be fantastic. We read every one and really interested. If you want to email us, it is Al at.
The rest is lean at gmail.com.
It's just fun to ask Al to say it because it looks like he doesn't know where it is, but actually it's because he's in a different country and was a delay.
No, I was trying to stop myself saying, ooh.
And we look forward to seeing you again when we do The Rest is Lean next time. See you guys.
Take
Yeah,
care,
buddy.
guys. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Bye.